Christina's Ghost, Chapter 7, Grandma's Hint. Uncle Ralph peered around the box of cornflakes. "I'm sorry I barked at you last night," he said. "You just startled me." That's okay. Chris had been trying to decide whether to tell him about the push-aside chest. He might accuse her of moving it herself. He might get angry all over again. The gray head was already bent over the book beside his plate. He wouldn't want to know, she decided. He doesn't want to think about anything that isn't in the book. But something scary was happening in this house. Something bad. She almost forgot to eat, trying to figure out what it was. Uncle Ralph swallowed his last spoonful of cereal. He closed his book. "We're going to see your grandmother today," he said. Well, all thoughts of the attic door were swept away for the moment. "You're kidding!" Chris exclaimed. "Will she come home with us?" "No, she won't. I called the hospital early this morning and she said she's feeling better, but the doctor wants her to stay a little while longer. Her arthritis has been acting up and he wants her to go through the arthritis clinic while she's there. It'll take a while." Chris eyed him suspiciously. "How long?" "A while, Christina, maybe 2 weeks." He pushed back his chair and began picking up dishes. "Anyway, we're going to see her today," he said. "I thought you'd be thrilled to see someone besides your cranky old uncle." Oh, I am." Chris stopped, aware that she wasn't being tactful. Let's go this minute," she begged. "After we wash the dishes and make our beds," Uncle Ralph said. "We don't want to come back to a mess." Chris wouldn't have cared about all that, but she kept still. She could hardly wait to see her grandmother. If she had to stay here another 2 whole weeks, she couldn't tell Uncle Ralph what was happening in the house. Maybe Grandma would listen. She had always taken Chris's adventures seriously. By the time Chris and Uncle Ralph had found their way through the hospital lobby in Rochester, taken the elevator to the 3rd floor, wandered down one long hall and then another, Chris didn't feel like talking at all. The hospital made her uneasy. People sat around in wheelchairs or walked up and down the halls in their bathrobes. All the nurses were in a hurry, and when they finally found room 347, Grandma didn't look like Grandma that Chris remembered. Her usually pink face was pale, and the glossy brown hair looked frizzy. Only her voice was the same. "Chrissy, Ralph, oh, I'm so glad that you two dears are here." She held out her arms, and Chris ran into them. Then Grandma hugged and kissed Uncle Ralph. "You both look so good to me," she exclaimed. "So healthy." "I've learned how to swim longer distances," Chris told her. "Well, good for you." Uncle Ralph sat on the edge of the bed and took Grandma's hand. "How are you feeling, Ma?" "Fine, except for the arthritis," Grandma said. "Bored. Hungry for my own cooking." She brushed off the rest of their questions after telling them that she was starting appointments at the arthritis clinic tomorrow. When her treatments were finished, she'd go home. "And you'll be there," she said, giving Chris another squeeze. "You and Jenny will be my helpers till your folks come back. We'll have a grand time, just like we planned all along." "I can't wait," Chris said. "Oh, I wish I could go home today." There was a little silence until Uncle Ralph shuffled his feet. Grandma looked at him and then at Chris. I wonder if you'd run down to the gift shop and get me a magazine, Ralph," she said. "You know the kind I like, and a few chocolates, dear, with cherries if they have them." Uncle Ralph seemed pleased to have a job. He hurried off and Grandma patted the bed beside her. "Sit here, Chrissy," she invited. "Now, how are things going? Tell me." The words just spilled out. "Uncle Ralph doesn't want to be with me. Oh, we get along okay." She wanted to chase away Grandma's worried frown. "But he'll be glad when I'm gone, and so will I," she added. Grandma hugged her. "My Ralph is a loner, I'm afraid. He's lived by himself for so long that he's used to it. But I'm sure he's glad to have you with him, dear. I'm just sure of it. He's always been a good host when I visited him in the city." Chris sighed. "Well, he loves you, Grandma. I think it's just tomboys he doesn't like." "Of course he loves you," Grandma said. "But he loves you too, dear. It's just that he's the kind of man who'd rather do something for you than tell you his feelings." Chris remembered Uncle Ralph crawling out on the branch to test her swing, even though he was afraid. She supposed that was what Grandma meant by doing something. "Anyway," Grandma went on, "Ralph is a very lonely person, Chrissy. Maybe you can bring a little sunshine into my boy's life while you're with him. What do you think? I don't know, Chris said honestly. I don't think he wants my kind of sunshine. But she knew she'd have to try for Grandma's sake, and for Uncle Ralph's too. If he really was lonely, she wanted to help him. There were footsteps in the hall, and Chris could hear Uncle Ralph talking to someone nearby. She had missed her chance to tell Grandma about all the strange things happening in the house. Grandma, what would you do if you wanted to find out something that happened a long time ago? She asked hurriedly. Uncle Ralph says something bad happened in the house where we're staying, but he doesn't know what it was. I want to find out. Grandma's eyes were on the door, watching eagerly for Uncle Ralph's return. Well, I guess I'd look in old newspapers, she said. You can go to the nearest library, and Uncle Ralph hurried in. He carried a whole stack of magazines and a huge box of chocolates. There, he said, looking pleased as he stacked the purchases on the table next to the bed. That should do it. Oh my, yes, Grandma said. Thank you, dear. She winked at Chris as she started to open the box of candy. Love comes in all kinds of packages, she said. Right, Chris? Right, Chris said. She winked back. But her mind was busy with Grandma's good idea. Look in old newspapers. All she had to do now was get Uncle Ralph to stop at a library.